Hello everyone, this is POW coming at you with another update. In this update, we're going to be talking about a major winter storm with heavy snow and severe weather as I walk you through the next 7 days. So before I do get started, if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. And I do ask you to share this video with your friends and family on social media. All right, so let's get started. Let's start off with the latest current temperatures as of this morning, March the 8th. And you can definitely see there's some colder air still over the Northeast. New York's checking in at 28 degrees. You can definitely see where it's colder and cooler and then clear skies. I mean, we dropped down to 32 all the way here in the Panhandle. So you can definitely see where some of the colder air is into Washington and Oregon. But we're going to be warming up in the midsection of the country throughout the week as we're watching a developing trough out in the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be bringing some snow and unfortunately some severe weather out ahead of it into portions of Texas and Oklahoma. So let's kind of walk you through the next 7 days to kind of plan your week ahead. Here's the latest surface map for later on this afternoon, Monday, March the 8th. We do see a developing system coming in off the Pacific Northwest with some rain showers into Washington and Oregon and northern portions of California. That'll be dumping some snows into some of the higher elevations of Oregon, especially into Idaho again, and then getting into Montana. But you can definitely see out ahead of it, we start to warm up in a big way, by today into portions of Texas, and that warmer surge will really start to creep up. Let me show you the temperatures. Now, these are afternoon temperatures, and I'll be showing you. These are like 21Z is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is like peak heating of the day. So by later on today, yeah, we're talking temperatures in the 60s and 70s for a good chunk of the central U.S. That colder air really starts to hang on into New England and places like Vermont, Vermont, New Hampshire, getting into Maine. I don't think you even get above freezing today. And you can definitely see out in the Pacific Northwest and Washington and Oregon, those 30s and 40s as that colder air trough really starts to make its way into from the west. It will start to filter down as we go throughout the week. So as we kind of take you into Tuesday, these are your Tuesday afternoon surface map. That trough will start digging in and traversing some little snow showers into Idaho, into Montana. That'll creep into portions of Canada as the jet stream really lifts. I mean, look at the blue lines here. You can definitely see where the jet stream basically is. All the colder air is bottled up in the northern parts of Canada and just the extreme parts of the Northeast as well as the Pacific Northwest, and then a warm air out ahead of it. And so you can definitely see by Tuesday of the temperatures, the afternoon temperatures, that colder trough will start to dig in off the Pacific Northwest. That'll filter in your 30s for afternoon. These are 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon high temperatures. That'll start to creep into Nevada and to get into Utah. And you can definitely see where the snow is going to be flying into the higher elevations of Idaho and to getting into Wyoming by then as we start creeping into the 70s down here into Texas, even the 80s into Mexico, down in the Rio Grande Valley. So you can definitely see the warmer temperatures starting to surge out ahead of this front. I mean, it is March, so we have a lot of transition going on, and that's unfortunately going to be setting the stage for a little bit more severe weather as we get later on into Friday and Saturday that we're going to be talking about. But we got a lot to deal with that before that, because this developing trough really starts to dig in and take shape over Wyoming, Casper, Wyoming's snow is going to start to fly by Tuesday night, getting into Wednesday morning, March the 10th. That heavier snow will traverse across Wyoming, getting into portions of South Dakota by then as rain starts to creep down further along the coast into California. We're talking San Francisco. That rain can start penetrating, getting into portions of Los Angeles by then, with heavier snows into the higher elevations of California. But yeah, out ahead of it, you got that warm surge out ahead of it. So there's going to be a sharp gradient, depends on where you live in the United States, for the week. And that's what I'm kind of walk you through the timeline so you can kind of plan your week ahead. Here's Wednesday afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can definitely see the trough digs a little bit further down to the southeast. Now we're talking some of those 30s and 40s start to creep into Colorado, getting into Nebraska, especially into the Dakotas. And yes, out ahead of it, we got that warm surge in the 70s, hitting approach of almost 80 degrees in portions of Oklahoma by then, as these 60s and 70s get into Arkansas, into Missouri, getting into the Ohio Valley. So definitely some warmer air out of the head of the developing trough. But by Thursday, it really starts to get its act together. I mean, it gets a little bit further south. That cold core will have a lot of colder air out ahead of it, with it as well. And that'll bring the snow line start to creep into portions of Nevada, getting in places like Flagstaff, Arizona by then, getting into Utah, say like Salt Lake City areas, getting into portions of, Colorado, and especially in some of the higher elevations of Colorado. And then, out ahead of it in the Ohio Valley, you're going to be dealing with some rain into Missouri, into Illinois, into Indiana, as well as Ohio by Thursday. And you can definitely see the temperatures by then, as that trough really starts to dig just a tad bit further south as we go throughout the week. This is by Thursday afternoon, 3, 4 o'clock. Those 20s, we won't even get above freezing in the mountains by then as that snow starts to fly. And yes, out ahead of it, we got those 60s and 70s surge, but you can start to see the downward trajectory of the temperatures into the 40s, into the 50s, getting into portions of Kansas, as well as Iowa, especially into Minnesota, even down in the 30s by then. But by Friday, that developing major winter storm really starts to take shape over the Colorado Rockies. We got a lot of snow flying in Utah. We got that heavier snows flying into portions of Arizona, and then especially as we get into Colorado, it's going to start off in the higher elevations, but that'll transfer into Denver and start dumping some heavier snows into Denver. That'll creep into still extending into Wyoming. And yes, out ahead of that, we'll have that rain and possibly some severe weather by then, as those temperatures will still be into the 70s and 80s. And you can definitely see back behind that where that snow is going to be flying. We don't get above freezing all day in Denver as those heavier snows really start to amplify over that area, especially like in the Front Range. I mean, this is going to be a big event, and it's going to be a little bit more of a longer duration event. So it's going to be a step down process from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, get into Sunday that we'll talk about. But out ahead of it, we're going to be having to deal with some severe weather. And unfortunately, the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted a slight risk for severe weather, where they're going to be tapping into some of that warmer air out ahead of it. So we could be talking about strong to severe thunderstorms into places like Wichita Falls, getting into much of central Oklahoma, getting into Tulsa by then, as those temperatures will be plenty of warm as that cold trough really starts to tap in, and then we'll have that colder air, out on the backside. So as we get into Saturday, this is really when those heavier snows really start to amplify, especially over Denver. We're talking 1, 2, almost probably, 3-inch snowfall rates at times in that area. So I'm really expecting a big event coming up for Colorado, especially into the Front Range, into places like Denver, and that'll start to approach into Nebraska by then with some of those heavier snows. And we're talking even double-digit snowfall totals in some of the places in Nebraska. But out ahead of it, you can definitely see we'll have to deal with that warmer surge of warm air from that southwest flow, and having to deal with the severe weather out ahead of the front. But as we get deeper into the day on Saturday, that's when I really start to feel like we'll have that colder air over Colorado. Will be below freezing for a day now. That heavier snows will be on the ground. That'll just bring in some more colder air and keep the atmosphere colder, and that way that trough really starts to dig in a little bit further south and then really amplifies those snows. So I'm definitely seeing some double-digit snowfall totals really start to pile up by then into Colorado. Like I mentioned, it'll start to approach into portions of Kansas, especially as we get into Nebraska. But by Saturday, you can definitely see that starting to transition or starting to feel the effects a little bit further south of that trough of those, below freezing temperatures start to creep into New Mexico. It's still over Colorado, but even at 38 degrees for an afternoon, afternoon temperature, 3 or 4 o'clock in Amarillo, 77 Dallas. So you can definitely see the huge temperature gradient that we're going to be working with this week as that trough, as a step down process starts to develop over the Pacific Northwest and start to encroach into the central U.S. And that's going to be creating that severe weather opportunity for the central part of the U.S. And then we see that polar jet that we've been kind of highlighting in previous videos start to creep down from the north. So it'll be a slow step down process, but it is going to be a transition from a more spring-like type atmosphere to more of a colder step down trend as we go, especially towards the middle of March. So as we continue the view on Saturday, we're going to be starting to still tap into some of that warmer air ahead of it. Yeah, we're going to have to be starting to deal with places like Kansas, Oklahoma, into Wichita Falls, especially like in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, a little bit further south into portions, say, like Waco. You're going to have to be dealing with some severe weather before that cold front really starts to dig in. And by Sunday, you can definitely see on the surface map that colder, air will still be encroached over Colorado. That'll start to kind of wind itself down, but that'll start to lift off into the northeast, where they're going to be dealing with snow in portions of Nebraska, getting into South Dakota by then. But yeah, you can definitely see by Sunday as that colder transition from rain to severe weather to a much colder period on the backside. And by Sunday, that severe threat continues to shift a little bit further off to the east. Now we're talking east of Dallas, places into Lufkin, get into Shreveport, Louisiana. We'll go into places like Little Rock, Arkansas, Springfield, Missouri. By then, as that front continues to shift further east. And look at the temperature gradient now. So instead of the 77s like you experienced in Dallas on Saturday, now we're talking 50 degrees for an afternoon, higher temperatures by 3 or 4 o'clock and the afternoon rolls around. So you can definitely see the transition starts to creep in of where that demarcation line. In Missouri, you could have that severe threat a little bit earlier in the day and then really cold on the backside, which is 30s for your afternoon temperatures coming up by Sunday. So you can definitely see a step down process as we get kind of throughout the week. And there's that polar jet encroaching into the northeast again, getting into New York. I mean, these are afternoon, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon temperatures by Sunday, March the 14th. We're talking, you're below freezing into New York, much of Connecticut, with Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. So definitely some colder air as a step down process, especially as we get into mid-March and beyond, as we've been kind of talking about in previous videos. But let's talk about some snow and some of these higher snows are going to be dealing with this week. Here's the chart from essentially from now until Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. So we're talking, some double-digit totals in Casper, Wyoming. 13 inches of snow. Laramie, 14 inches of snow. Getting into Cheyenne, Wyoming, almost 22 inches of snow. Definitely some heavier snow is going to be from this system, as it's going to be cranking over, an extended period of time, over, not just one day, but over a day or two, even possibly 3 days in some areas. And let's start zooming down to the south. So even places like Utah, Salt Lake City, maybe 2 inches, but some of the higher totals will be creeping a little bit further south into Cedar City, say like 9 inches. And you can definitely see some of the heavier snows. And then this is portions of, the upstate mountains of Colorado. let's swing into Arizona. I mean, we're talking places like Flagstaff, 7 inches of snow. Into Prescott, 7 inches of snow from this system. As we kind of swing up into New Mexico, into Santa Fe, we're talking possibly 2 inches as that snow line starts to creep a little bit further south. But now let's go back into Colorado. Man, that's where it's going to really set up shop, and really talking about some definitely heavy snows, even double-digit snows over possibly starting to creep into the higher elevations on Thursday. And then I do feel like it's going to start really heavier snows into Friday, and especially into Saturday in places like Denver and the Front Range of Colorado. So yeah, you can see Trinidad, 9 inches, Pueblo, 9 inches, Colorado Springs, 13 inches of snow, Castle Rock, 18 inches of snow, Denver, 15 inches of snow. Places into Fort Collins and the Front Range, 21 inches of snow. And yeah, you think that's a lot? I mean, that's the little bit more conservative model. That's the European model. The GFS is really starting to go gangbusters. And this has actually been showing this for the last several runs. And man, I don't believe this one, but yeah, 23 inches in Fort Collins, 28 inches in Denver, 38 inches in Colorado Springs. We're talking 45 in Pueblo. So yeah, I don't believe this. I think this is definitely too bullish, but you can definitely get the idea. We're talking feet of snow coming for you guys in Colorado by Thursday, Friday, Saturday, into Sunday. And then let's take you up into Nebraska and back to the European model. Nebraska, 13 inches in North Platte. So this is definitely a big system coming up for March. Sterling, 11 inches. Colby, 12 inches. Scottsbluff, 18 inches of snow. Down into Omaha, 2 inches. So you can definitely see in that narrow banding where, earlier on, that'll traverse across and still be dumping, 1 to 4 inches in portions of Minnesota as well. And here's your precipitation over the next 7 days. We start to see the Pacific Jet start to get a little bit more active. This is where some of your heavier rains are going to start to fall over the next 7 days, and that's where we're going to be dealing with a severe threat and have that huge transition zone from that colder air on the backside, and then off into the southeast, into the northeast. It's pretty dry. But like I mentioned in previous videos, once we get beyond the 15th, that trough just continues shifting off, and that colder air starts to encroach into from the north. So I definitely feel by week 2 next week, all this will fill in, and as well as the snowfall will start to fill in for portions of the Northeast as well. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.